Welcome to Noble Warrior Life with CK Lin. And I have my friend Dan Safkow here with us. I'm really excited to have him here with us. I've known Dan since 2008? And he's a serial entrepreneur. He's a speaker. He is we can go over many accomplishments that you have done in the past. Why I invited you, my friend, to be on the show, because you are someone that I admire from afar. Your sense of humor, who you are as a man, who you are as a father, who you are as an entrepreneur. Just every time I engage with you, I really feel your sincerity to make a difference in the world. So welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, CK, and it's good to see you again. The feeling is mutual. I think we have a lot of things in common with regards to just being students of human potential, and we're always trying to crowdsource something, experimenting with a little bit of positive social engineering.
Yeah. So you have many different professions, careers in the past. I think given a time right now, in my mind, the coronavirus phenomenon, essentially you're compressing all of the different transitions all at the same time in life, economically, parentally, relationally, financially, career-wise, just health-wise, all kinds of different transitions all at the same time. So why don't we actually go a little bit back just so that people have an idea of a vast amount of experiences you have, and then we can go into what it actually takes to develop that agility, that resilience, that grit to go through different transitions.
All right. So I'll begin my story with my career path. About 25 years in marketing, but always excelling as what they call an entrepreneur. So I was always inventing things within my work. I was lucky to work for a marketing company that encouraged that for 13 years, but always really wanting to be an entrepreneur. And about 2005, 2006, I made that leap. And I became a promotional products distributor. I was just putting logos on caps and mugs and pens and things like that. But knowing that that was just my transition out, because my company that I worked for actually hired me to be their promotional products person. So it represented an easy transition. And I could have a revenue stream. But also knowing in the back of my mind, that's going to lead to the next thing. And the next thing was really interesting because I started offering MP3 players to my clients. They just started appearing.
That's right. I remember. Yeah. That's right. Peak potential, right?
Well, yeah. So I was just putting logos on them as corporate gifts. And then I met Alex Mondosian, who
That's right.
Who encouraged me to preload them for people like him and others in the seminar space. And he said, can you do that? And I didn't actually know, but I just said yes, and knowing that I could figure it out. So he became my first client and my partner. And then he introduced me to other speakers and thought leaders in the seminar space, because at that time, everybody was selling CDs. If you offer a coaching program or a membership package, the deal in the back of the room is if you sign up today, you'll get the collection of CDs. And Alex had the foresight to see, well, why be limited to CDs? Because you need to be beside your CD player. Why not put it on MP3 players? That way you can listen and learn anytime, any place. And that, ironically, is how I discovered Alex, because I was downloading podcasts, which was a new thing at the time, while walking my dog. And I was listening and learning anytime, any place. So when he said that to me, I didn't know him at the time, but I felt like he was talking to me. And that's when I reached out to him, and he said, brilliant idea. Well, actually, he said, you stole my idea. Brilliant. Let's be partners.
I love that.
And so we did. And he introduced me to people like Mark Victor Hansen and Brian Tracy and T. Harv Eker, where you may have seen the preloaded iPod. And so I did that for a number of years, probably my favorite pivot, as they say, since I've been a serial entrepreneur, because it introduced me to all those thought leaders. And every week, a bundle of CDs was landing on my doorstep from one of these thought leaders. And not only was I transferring the content to MP3 players, but I was consuming the content. And I discovered that I was an audio learner and became a big fan of it. And then when the iPhone came out, nobody wanted MP3 players anymore. So that kind of put a stake or put a fork in that business. And I had to pivot again. And I pivoted in the wrong direction because I thought my asset at that time was this laser that I bought to mark these iPods, because I was also doing customization and fulfillment service for my clients. And so I would engrave their logos and messages on these iPods before I would send them out. And when that business ended, I thought this $20,000 machine was my asset. And so my pivot was into e-commerce, and I started engraving iPhone pieces.
That's right.
I thought if the smartphone is killing my if the smartphone is killing my custom iPod business, I'll get into the smartphone accessory business. But in hindsight, the laser was not my asset. I should have just sold it off. My asset was my relationships with people in that space, the thought leaders.
That's right.
And ironically, just in the last couple of months, I'm starting to pivot back into that space. I'm going to be doing some work with Wake Up audiobooks, puts me back in the audio space with thought leaders. And what that is Wake Up audiobooks is partnering with BrainTap Audio. BrainTap Audio is brainwave technology that sits behind not guided meditations, but guided visualizations. And it's kind of like, it gives you the benefits of meditation, but without the work of meditation, because for somebody like me, meditation is really hard. But with BrainTap Audio, I can just listen to these guided visualizations and get the same benefits. So what we're going to do is...
So is it kind of like a vision board on the move, vision board in motion with some kind of a thing that you listen to?
Yeah, they have, what they have is called bundles inside of it. They may have bundles for rest and relaxation. They may have really specific bundles for different sports. I think there's a cancer bundle for somebody who's in recovery to find calm and relaxation and rejuvenation. So they have a lot of niche bundles inside of the BrainTap environment. And we're creating our own niche bundle. We're taking the works of authors and summarizing famous books and then putting the BrainTap technology behind it. So you can do some super learning by listening to the audiobooks, but at the same time receive the brainwave technology in the background. So on the other side of listening to that 20-minute summary, you also feel calm and rejuvenated.
I love that. So it's like calmness, super learning on demand.
Yeah.
Supercharged with some special sauce technology that you guys have.
Right? So I'm really excited about that, because I've been looking for a project that actually provides great benefits to people. I love doing this kind of stuff because it's creative, but at the end of the day, I'm not solving any problems, or not solving any human problems with phone cases. It protects your phone in a stylish way, but it's a commodity problem.
By the way, I have this really cool right. Yeah. For me, this is a symbolism of what warrior spirit is. So that's why I have it. But let me actually generalize that. Let's actually translate what you've learned for people who are watching, for people who are listening to this. Because you had said, in hindsight, that wasn't my asset. My asset was my relationships. Can you share with us how you come to that conclusion? Because one may say, yeah, that capability of the laser etching technology, that machinery that you have could be an asset, but so walk us through your thinking behind it, and then translate that to people who are listening to this so they can actually learn your lesson as well.
Yeah, well, for me as a business owner, finding and maintaining purpose is really important. And as I kind of mentioned, I don't feel like making phone cases is a purposeful existence. And I'm 59 years old now, so for the next 10 years...
No way!
For the next 10 years, I want to lean into something that is purposeful. With phone cases or any other kind of commodity product, even the product itself isn't the business. the business is ranking on Google or Amazon. So it almost doesn't matter what the product is. You're following a formula, you're keeping up updates to that formula, and really you can put any product through that.
Oh,
And
that's interesting. That's actually a really interesting insight. Is it just for the phone case category? Is it just e-commerce in general? Or is
yeah,
it Etsy specific? Can you
yeah,
share with
well,
us?
any product to be found, whatever the marketplace is, or if it's your own website, the game is ranking. So you end up, just staring at the glowing box all day, trying to figure that out because you've got to beat your competitors. But
Mm.
in a space that's more service driven, or or if you're supporting people who are providing valuable human services, it's just a more fulfilling experience. That knowing that the audio or the coaching program or whatever that is that has a human to human connection has the potential to change somebody's life.
Mm.
A phone case isn't going to change anyone's life.
Mm. So if I'm hearing you right, part of the decision tree, part of the criteria that you use is the meaning that it actually has for you. And in this case, phone cases, commoditized phone cases don't actually change people's lives, doesn't mean that much for you. So you wanted to pivot into something that's going to touch people's lives. Is that an accurate reflection of what you said?
Yeah, correct. Once I got into e-commerce, I realized that it wasn't fulfilling except on the on the money side. And I'm not a money motivated person. So,
Mhm.
and I think everybody at a certain age, generally over 40, is looking for a higher measure of fulfillment. That the number of people who start nonprofits after they're 40, the number of people who go into coaching or something like that, I think exponentially increases. That once we're in the second half of our life, we start to take inventory and we
Mhm.
say, okay, what can I do to serve others? And I think that found me at about the same time that I made that business decision, or maybe after I made it. I took inventory and I thought, well, what else is there? Something else I could be doing that reaches people on a deeper level, or how can I support those who are reaching people at a deeper level?
I love that. I don't know if you ever read the book called Second Mountain.
No.
It was written by this journalist, I believe. I can't remember his name. Basically, his assertion here is the first half of our life is in the pursuit of success,
Mhm.
money, fame, reputation, validation, all these accolades that we have on the external level. And at some point, once you achieve that, then the egoic is still unsatisfied, right? It's still saying what's next. Oh, then they realize the mountain the climb wasn't the thing that ultimately is going to make them successful. So ultimately, then they need to look for fulfillment,
Yeah.
meaning what's purpose, what's the purpose of their life, and etc. So yeah, so that's a beautiful journey that you share with us. So how can we translate that to someone who's listening to this right now? They may be in the middle of a transition of their first mountain to second mountain, or they may be in the fight of the base level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Hey, I need survival, cash, security right now. Don't talk to me about purpose and meaning, the
Yeah.
second mountain of our life.
I think
What would
that
you say to that?
the best way is to develop some kind of side hustle. We all still have to pay the bills, and now we're in a very scarce economy. It's going to get scarcer, so that still needs to come first. But there's still an hour in the day or a few hours in the week for us to pursue our passion projects. And even though this has been my moneymaker for the last 5 or 6 years, I've never stopped pursuing my passion projects, always with the intention or the understanding that that's going to open up a door. You don't always have to have clarity on that path. And in my case, I haven't, but I've always kept myself in that game. In the last couple of years, I started the Shine Movement,
That's right.
Orange County, which is an event that is designed to leave people inspired. I don't make any money off of it. In fact, each event costs me a little bit of money out of pocket. So like the silent sponsor, but it attracts the kind of people that I want to attract that are doing big change kind of things. So just to be in that space keeps me in the game and keeps portion of my focus on that opportunity or the opportunity to come. I made a film with my son called Making Lemonade.
That's right.
This was at my own expense, but it told the story of three people who went from great trauma and tragedy to living lives of purpose. So in a benevolently selfish way, I picked people that I wanted to model, to be subjects in that film. So again, always keeping my focus in the game, even though I don't necessarily have focus, I do have focus on staying connected to those kind of people. And I probably have launched 4 or 5 different websites and an app in the last couple of years, all with a human potential angle. And I've closed all but one of them. I'm like my own venture capital thing. A venture capital firm is based on the premise that only 1 out of 20 things are going to work eventually, but when they do, it'll work in a big way. And so I haven't gotten to my 20 yet, but one of these things I'm doing is going to stick in a big way. And maybe that's Wake Up Audio, or maybe I can support them in sticking in a big way, or maybe it's one of my own things, but that's kind of where I'm at.
So let me recap what you said in between the lines, perhaps.
Sure.
You have this entrepreneurial creative spirit, so you're constantly creating things. You're clear about the space you wanted to swim in, the lane you want to swim in, which is the human potential component, which is to make a difference with human beings component. You continually are launching new projects, and then you also close them down when you don't see particular attractions in whatever. So let me concretize that a little bit. How did you pick those projects, and at what point do you choose to close them down?
Yeah. The projects are sometimes based on the tools available, and then I back into, how can I make this something that I'm passionate about, which I don't recommend that as a strategy for people watching, but that's just kind of my path, because I love tools. I love things that I can build now that I would have had to been a programmer a year or two ago to do. For instance, the last thing I launched and I recently closed down was an app called Mojo Dojo, that in a nutshell, It was kind of like Instagram for mindfulness. And even though it was really simple to develop based on the tool that I found, the tool was really expensive. So I needed to see some immediate results or some social signals that people were really into it. And what I saw was people appreciated it, but they weren't returning on a consistent enough basis that I could have supported it with ad revenue or a membership of some kind. So that only ran for about 2 months before I saw that it didn't have the sticky factor that people were checking in on it every day. So I closed that down, and we'll be relaunching it as a website, as a kind of a newsfeed curator, aggregator in the very near future. So that's how I do it, sometimes tool-based and not strategy-based. So anybody watching, I would encourage you to first understand what your why is, and then develop a strategy around that makes sense for what you can easily easily feed content into. If it's out of your expertise or out of your wheelhouse, find a different way of doing it that is easy for you. Because if it's not easy, it probably won't be lasting from a content creation standpoint.
So pause for a second. So you mentioned two things, right? We're kind of jumping a little bit, but I think there's a common thread here. One is finding your why, what resonates for you within. Is there any kind of mental models, any processes that you can help them crystallizing what their why is? Any processes, any books, any resources that you can walk them through? Any questions?
I used to be a brainstorming facilitator, and the real simple formula, at least the first step of the formula, for any brainstorming meeting was, how might I? And then you fill that blank in with the problem that you're trying to solve. So we can do that as individuals. How might I? And then look at the problems in the world that you want to solve. And so maybe you could even extend that sentence to say, how might I contribute to the solving of blank blank? And then start listing out bullet points. Give yourself a big sheet of paper and every day revisit it, because if you do it in multiple sessions, different things will bubble up and emerge. So maybe give yourself a week to do that, and try to fill that sheet up with paper. And then at the end of that, review it and see which one really jumps out at you. And then
can you give us an example of how you arrived to Brain Tap? Is it how might I solve for anxiety? Like, can you give us some examples of that so that way people can really empathize that?
So my story in the present day is coming to understand my experience with mental conditions. I have experienced mild depression most of my adult life, and probably more recently anxiety. So I've always wanted to serve others who are in the same state as me, or maybe worse. So I remember being at dinner a couple of years ago with some good friends, and one of them posed the question to all of us and said, what do you want to be remembered for? How do you want to serve people moving forward? And I blurted out, I want to be a mental wellness advocate. And he says, well, what does that look like? And that challenged me to think in those brainstorming terms. And so the answer to mine might be, how might I serve others who are experiencing a mental condition? And just saying that out loud, or saying it to myself, puts the intention out there, and then it puts you in a position to see things that you might not have seen before, or find things, or let things find you. And what found me as a result of that was, I saw a post on Instagram about NAMI, which is the National Association for Mental Illness, and they were looking for volunteer speakers. So that was really my first step in fulfilling that statement that I made at that dinner. I became a speaker for them, and I speak to community groups and hospitals and other places about my unique experience with a mental condition. And then that created a bit of momentum, so I could come back and ask that question again, like, okay, great, thanks universe for bringing that to me. How might I share tips, strategies, and tools for mental wellness, and support myself with that? Because, as I mentioned, NAMI is a nonprofit group, and I'm a volunteer. So it's a great passion project, but I really want to be able to support myself with mental wellness advocacy, so I can do more of it. And then you can drill down within that, like, okay, I also know that I love audio, and I love audio learning. So you can draw a Venn diagram, and on this circle say, okay, how might I serve people with that experience depression, anxiety, or insomnia, or other things? And then in that other circle, okay, how might I serve people who love audio learning? And again, just setting that intention. And then a couple of months ago, I went to a local biohacking event that Dr. Patrick Porter was speaking at, and he's the founder of Brain Tap. And I sampled the product there. I got a free download. I did more research on it because I really enjoyed what I was hearing. And then once I started experiencing the benefits for myself by listening to their guided visualizations, I immediately contacted my friend and asked him, can you put me in touch with Dr. Porter, my friend who hosted the event? I would love to somehow get involved. And I didn't know what that looked like yet. And then through a series of conversations, I realized that my friend's co-founder of that property was actually developing this side project with Dr. Porter called Wake Up Audio. His name is Stephen E. Schmidt. And he intervened and recruited me and said, hey, I'm doing this with Dr. Porter, and I know you've got a background with these authors and audio learning. Why don't you get involved with me? So the brainstorming exercise that I mentioned just helped me get clarity and also helped me get my radar clear on what I was hoping to see and what I was hoping to attract. So there's a little bit of law of attraction going on there, that once I set the intention, it kind of found me or presented itself to me.
Thank you for sharing that. That was a beautiful way. But let's actually go a little deeper on the middle part, because you had an outcome in mind. You kept going. Yes, there was a lot of attraction, but you continue to take action. You continue to explore. You follow up with people, right? You continue to go down that way. But I do want to focus on the mechanism part a little bit, because part of it's not just going out and reach out to people and being networking conversations, but there's also a level of inner awareness of what your own core competencies are. So if you can talk to us about the inner awareness of your own core competencies, that would be really helpful, because I think a lot of people in general, this is not just this is not a Dan thing, but it is a generalized human thing, is we are very attached to the labels, the identities. Oh, I used to make phone cases, or I used to be an audio speaker guy, right? But you were able to let that go and just explore openly on whatever that may be for you. So I'm curious to know, how did you develop that inner awareness of what your core competencies were?
Well, with the brainstorming process and with those Venn diagrams that I described, the second step of the process, after you get through the first layer, how might I, and maybe that's really broad, serve others, and then you write down all those things, and then the ways that you can serve others, and maybe one of those things is events. That would be in my case. Another thing is audio learning. Then you simply ask the same question and you keep drilling down. How might I serve others through audio learning? And then the list might look like create my own audios, partner with audio creators, create a digital library. So, I could keep going on and come up with a list of 10 things like that. So then pick one of those. How might I partner with others? And then, that list might look like, okay, research, look at my existing relationships, and you could create another list of 10. Okay, so drill down again. How might I leverage my existing relationships? So now that forces me to do research. Okay, who am I connected to on LinkedIn and Facebook and through friendships that might have assets? So just keep drilling down with that simple statement. How might I? How might I? How might I? And it's just a terrific process for putting a much finer point on what you're looking for and leveraging your assets at the same time, because a lot of our assets are conscious, but some of them are unconscious, and it forces us to ask ourselves those questions to reveal them to us. Because on some level also, we all, I think, suffer from imposter syndrome or pushing down the assets and the skills that we have. But through that exercise and through that process, we can't deny those assets and those resources that we have.
I love a quote by Seth Godin. I think he did an interview, I believe was with Aubrey Marcus. And he said, if you're pushing your envelope out of your comfort zone, you're always going to have imposter syndrome. Because if you don't have imposter syndrome, that means you can do this. But if you know you're pushing your envelope out, a little bit outside your comfort zone, you always have imposter syndrome. So, but I don't want to belabor on this, but I do want to focus on this a little bit more. There's a gradient. I mean, I can do a million things. So can you, right? We all have developed at different levels of capability or something. However, there are certain skills that we're well honed. We have a reputation for it. It's really our superpower. It's effortless for us. We do it at a high level, really, really high level. Versus something that's, let's say I'm right now starting to learn the ukulele, right? I can play some chords. So that's about it. How are you able to, for you, define your own superpower? Something that's effortless for you? Because, and I asked this question specifically because fish swim in water and doesn't see water. It's effortless for you, so therefore you don't see it. It's really, really easy for you. How are you able to, in all the skill sets, all the capabilities that you have, identify the highest leveraged skill set? In this case, your relationships with these speakers.
That's a good question, CK. On one hand, I've always had great self-awareness, but on the other hand, I've always been really self-critical of the skills that I've had. Fortunately, I've been blessed with some really good friends that recognize that, and they're always encouraging me to stop giving away the things that I should be valuing, which I tend to do a lot, both in terms of my time. I tend to over volunteer, and my resources, consulting for free when I could be getting paid for free. So just if you're blessed like I am to have really good and smart friends, first off, listen to them when they tell you have something that is of value to others, and then respect what they're saying by changing that a little bit and stop giving it away, because it is incongruent for me to say things like I want to be a mental wellness advocate, and then to put all this energy and effort into business lines that don't necessarily support that are going to be obstacles to me actually supporting myself somehow with the advocacy that I seek. So that's been the single biggest asset to me. And in this case of working,
wait, the single biggest asset is your friends who is able to shine a mirror on you and tell you things that you will either ignore or you don't see. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, another example of that would be my experience with cognitive behavioral therapy. I only had one session. Somebody reached out to me, and she's a therapist, I think, and it was at a time that I was experiencing some depression, and I shared that with her, and she said, "Oh, why don't you come in? I'll give you a free session." And she said, "But be prepared, because it's going to be 3 or 4 hours. It's not going to be a 50-minute session." Mm-hmm. And I think what she used on me was, and I say that kindly, I'm so grateful, but she exposed me to cognitive behavioral therapy, which was deconstructing all the lies that I told myself. I sat there and talked, and she wrote down all this stuff, and then she challenged me on about 10 things that I said. And is this true? Is this really true? Is this really true? And she deconstructed all of those for me, and they were all lies of some measure that I just wasn't giving myself credit for. So that was what was going on, revealed a lot of what was going on in my head. And as it turns out, my friends were just doing that naturally. Mm-hmm. Like when I would say if they would challenge me, and well, why aren't you consulting instead of giving away all your information?
Mm-hmm.
That was their own version of putting me through cognitive behavioral therapy, and I'm so uh, lucky to have them. So for me personally, that's been my biggest asset, is people holding up that mirror to me to get me out of my own circular thought process on why I wasn't good enough or worthy enough. And so whatever it takes, maybe people watching don't have the kind of friends or a therapist friend that intervenes, but how else can they do that through joining a mastermind group, by hiring a coach? Hiring a coach costs money, but you can form your own mastermind group with people that you know, like, and respect, and insist that they give you honest feedback, and that won't cost you anything. So as entrepreneurs, I think we have to do things like that, because we all have loops that will get trapped in, and that will cause us to stay in our comfort zone and not get us to that next level that we really want. There's always that force that's pulling us back, pulling us down to our comfort zone. So we need an external force to help us get to that next level and beyond. So that external force can take a lot of forms, and I know you're active in masterminds and things like that. So I would love to hear your thoughts on what external forces have, and I know you've been an entrepreneur for some time too. So what external forces might you use to get yourself out of that loop and to a different level?
Thank you for asking me. So I use a variety of tools. I really feel that everything that you said is accurate around how can we essentially be honest with our internal space as well as on the external space. Very direct ways, really have a group of people around me who is willing to show me the truth of how I show up in the world without bullshitting, right? But also in a space of kindness and compassion and acceptance, rather than just giving it to me per se. Yeah. I love the quote that a friend of mine shared. He said, honesty without compassion is brutality. Because our ego mind gets reactive when someone just give it to you without permission. Yeah. And it goes, who the hell are you to tell me this, right? Criticisms and unsolicited feedback. What it does for me is it's the most honest, it's the most direct way to face our internal truth. And it really allowed me to see what my limiting beliefs are. And at the end of the session, then I can make a judgment or make a choice of what to do with whatever I learn about myself. That the inner exploration of it, the self-discovery aspect of it, as well as the relational aspect of it, how I show up. So these are some of the tools or that I use personally as a way to really help me get to see the truth internally as well as externally.
Yeah, and we do need those external forces to help us. Thinking out of the box is a cliche, and I think when something becomes a cliche, it devalues it. But our heads are a box that we have to get out of to see what's going on. And in worst case scenario, as I know through my experience with depression, there's also a potential for a spiral to be at the bottom of that box that will take us down. And if we don't do something, if we don't have some kind of external force that's giving us a checkup, that we could stay in that box or worse yet, spiral.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being open about how you go about doing this. But I do want to ask you specifically, what are some of the criteria that you use to select those friends or select the guide that you use or a therapist that you use? Because I would assert that, it's kind of like dating, right? there's the resume, there's the dating profile, and then there is the energetic resonance once you meet the person. You're like, oh, okay, it's going to be a second date, third date, etc. So similarly, what are your criteria to select your counsel, select your mastermind, select your trusted advisors?
Boy, it's a good question, and I don't know that I have one other than intuition. You know, as I've met so many people in my life, and at my core, I'm a bit of a loner, so I'm just so lucky to have such good friends. I noticed that a lot of my friends, I'm from Ohio, and most of my friends are all from the Midwest, Michigan, Chicago, Pennsylvania. So I think there's, again, that unique law of attraction that happens, but it just comes down to intuition, because, you know, still the amount of things that I do, I encounter so many people and I can't be friends with them all. So you just have to really tune into that connection. It's that radar, that filter is inside of us, and that's the first part, is recognizing that, okay, I do have a connection with that person. But the second part, the part that's hard for me, is the follow-up, rather than just be two people that pass, whether that's a potential friendship, a business relationship, or a romantic relationship. Somebody still has to take action again and again and again, and hopefully you're both taking action. So it's dialing into your intuition and then taking action. I've made one good friend in the last year. He actually appears in the film that I made, and his name is Scott Sargent. And somebody, I'll say this comically, fixed us up on a paddleboard blind date because he was paddling every day in Dana Point by himself, and I was paddling every day in Laguna Beach. And this mutual friend knew us. He said, "Why don't you guys paddle together?" And so that was kind of weird, because we had to call each other and arrange this paddle time. And it turned out to be so good. We ended up having a lot in common. And then it took one of us or both of us to continue to follow up, to make that happen. And I've had so many missed opportunities in my life where I didn't follow up with somebody. And I'm grateful that this time I did. And I consider Scott to be such a dear friend today, and a source of inspiration for me. So step one, intuition, and step two is action. So it's as simple as that.
So one of my past guests said, Veronica, she said, I just follow what makes me feels good.
Yeah.
What made me feel good. So essentially very, very similar in that way. So regarding the action part though, drilling in on that, I think a lot of times the intention is there, the willingness there, and then you may think of the person or the people that you really want to get in touch with or develop a relationship with during Christmas time or New Year's or birthdays and things like that. But the action is lacking. So do you have a system, like a technology way to help you follow up?
No, I don't have a system, but it's ironic, because we live in Southern California. I think Orange County has 3 million people. I don't know what LA County has, probably 3 times as much. And we have a crisis of community in a city, in a metropolitan area of 10 million. And my friend Peter Montoya does a lot of speaking about this, and he's really opened up my mind that, you know, here we are in this packed area, and we're all kind of crossing paths, but we're not pausing long enough to connect. We live in dense communities, and most of us only know a few of our neighbors. I know when I grew up in Ohio, you know, you knew everybody on your street. But we also had front porches and front yards in Ohio, so it was almost impossible not to know your neighbors. Whereas nowadays in California, when we socialize, most of us don't have front porches. Where do we go when we have a party? We go to the back of the house on a patio. And what is the patio surrounded by? a wall. So that's completely counter to, and that's Peter's teaching. So I want to give him credit for that. But I thought it was such a great example of the different kind of world that we live in, that we can be around so many people and still be alone. So it really does require work and follow up to make something stick. And we're sometimes in our comfort zones, and even though we crave companionship, relationship, and community, we just don't work hard enough at it. We have to work harder.
So you said earlier that you're an introvert by nature, and so am I. And but also right now you're a community builder with the Shine movement, right? Yeah. What are some of the, how do I ask this question? What are some of the new skill sets that you're learning to cultivate a community? Because I'll share it from my point of view. Everything you said earlier about relationships, that's something that I wanted to cultivate myself as well. I'm just not that skilled at it yet. And community building, something that I intrinsically desire as well. So what are some of the tactical ways to build this peer group, this trusted advisor group from your point of view, now that you're in the process of building this Shine movement in the Orange County area?
When I first started networking, because I had to network when I became an entrepreneur, it was so painful for me. I would go to Chamber of Commerce meetings and things like that, and I would be the guy on the edge of the room, and if I got lucky, I would have a conversation with another guy on the edge of the room. So I would come away from that meeting with one business card from one other introvert. And I don't know if I heard it on a podcast or live at a seminar, but somebody said, if you're forcing yourself to go to networking meetings, even if it's uncomfortable, don't stand on the fringe with the other introverts. Look around, find out who that super connector is, and go up and introduce yourself to that person, because that person is going to connect you to all the other people in an exponential fashion. And I thought, I could at least do that. And then, and it works too. So you can, it's like being in a bicycle race and you draft behind that person in front of you who's breaking down the wind resistance, and then you can kind of glide through. It's kind of a shortcut to networking. And then years later, it occurred to me that, well, I can be that person in the center of the room or up on the stage. I'm not an exclusive introvert. I'm a situational extrovert, and I can turn it on when I need to. And that wasn't easy in the beginning. I had a great mentor in Alex Mondosian who made me take a stage as a speaker way before I was ready to. I went from not speaking at all to speaking in front of 500 people. So that got me over my fear of speaking real fast. So if we don't have a mentor like that, we just have to force ourselves. And it can be something like starting a meetup when we're allowed to meet up in public again. It can be doing what you're doing now, just putting yourself out there as a Zoom guy. The thing that we can all do, and you're pretty good at this too, my superpower is curating. I don't know that I'll ever consider myself a thought leader. If you give me a Facebook page or put me on your screen like I am now, I'll bloviate all over the place on what I think is important. But what I'm really good at is curating information and people for live events, or in the case of the film, to speak on video. And we can all do that. So you don't have to be a thought leader to lift up other thought leaders. And that's what I do with the Shine events, and that's what I do with the film, and that's what I'll do on my next online property. So that's the way that an introvert can put themselves in the middle of that wheel and be a hub instead of a spoke is curating information. And then that curation process, you're just filling up your brain with all this great information, and eventually you'll find your own voice. And just through the combination of hearing philosophies and teachings of others, and it'll get easier in time for you to do things like we're doing now.
Yeah. 100% agree, my friend. Let me just do a quick recap and then I'll ask a follow-up question. So what you've said so far is, well, first understanding your why, and then continue to ask the questions using a brainstorming method that you've used of how can I, and then in the process, identify your core superpower, your core competencies. And if you don't have that self-awareness, find trusted advisors, masterminds who can actually help you see what you don't see, what your superpowers are, and also what your limiting beliefs are, right? And in the process, as you develop your own awareness of what your superpowers may be, and then put yourself in a situation where you can be the center, right? The hub, all the connections who could potentially benefit from this particular mechanism, this particular superpower that you have. Is that a pretty good recap of what you shared so far?
CK, that's a great recap, and it's also a great example of what I described earlier. By having a friend like you who can break that down, I come into a meeting like this not thinking that I have a philosophy, necessarily a strategy, a step-by-step process, but by you being that reflector and just reeled off like 5 things that I said that could be used in a consecutive order. So you're giving me a dose of cognitive behavioral therapy right now by revealing that, yeah, I do have a step-by-step process.
You do. There's a curriculum. Yeah, for sure. And also the inner game that we didn't actually quite cover on this episode today is the inner game component. Because throughout the process, there is the inner awareness of, hey, I want to do this thing no matter what. So I'm going to continue to create things, and I'm going to step up even when I don't feel like I'm ready. Yeah. So for example, when Alex Mondosian say, hey, let's partner up, I don't know how to do it. Yes. Or Alex Mondosian said, hey, I'm going to put you on a stage. I'm not a speaker. Okay, I'm going to do it anyway. There's that warrior spirit aspect of it. You're going to do it even if you, quote unquote, don't feel like you're quite ready yet. Is that an accurate, again, a reflection of the journey that you went through?
And that's a 2-step process. Is when the opportunity reveals itself, you have to say yes, even if you're uncomfortable. And then after that, you have to keep saying yes, or develop your own mechanism to keep doing that thing, because the resistance is still inside of you. There's still a part of you that says, this is uncomfortable, I want to stop doing it. And when I started doing video online, the first time I did a 2-minute video, it literally took me 4 hours. And nowadays, when I do a 2-minute video, it literally takes me 2 minutes.
Because one shot. There's no prep. That's amazing. I'm looking forward to that day, my friend.
Yeah. In the beginning, there was that voice in my head that said, this has to be perfect. This doesn't feel right. And the more I did it, the more that voice went away. It was as if that voice said, shit, he's not going to stop. So I might as well stop. That the only way to defeat that voice that we all have that wants to hold us back is to power through it. And eventually that voice will disappear, whether it's speaking from a stage, whether it's doing online videos, whether it's doing something like this. The idea of this makes some people feel wildly uncomfortable. And to them, I would say, okay, then that means do it, and keep doing it if it's going to further your mission.
Can you give us something? So if I'm someone watching this, I want to be more public. I want to be more prominent. I want to demonstrate more thought leadership. and I'm in with you, Dan. But what do I do? You know, so can you give them some tactical steps that they can take to, well, one, overcome their inner resistance, and also two, just show up and share whatever they want to share?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. First, when events come back, I know you and I are lifelong learners, and I know I attend a lot of events, and you probably do too. So in the event environment, when they come back, be that person that sits in the front row, and then be that person who's, whenever they ask for a volunteer, your hand shoots up, even though it's uncomfortable. That will not only help you with that resistance that may be common, but it's also going to connect you with more people in the room, because once you engage with the speaker or the trainer, then you'll be more approachable. So it'll just make your experience that much better. In the online world, I would say it's doing video. Like I said, most people, it's way out of their comfort zone. So start small. Start just getting comfortable with the technology first. So you've got FaceTime on your phone. You've got video messenger on Facebook. You've got all these mechanisms just to practice with video. So just doing this and wishing somebody a happy birthday, that gets you comfortable with the technology. So just get in the habit, especially when in these times of isolation. Just turn on your video camera every day and send somebody a one-to-one message. And that starts training your brain that video isn't something to be feared. And that is a zero risk environment. When you send your mom a message, or when you send a friend a message, no one is going to criticize you for doing that. In fact, just the opposite. They're going to be so grateful, because no one is getting video messages these days, or I shouldn't say no one, but very few. So when you start getting that feedback, you're going to start feeling good about video. And then the next step is, so that's one-to-one. And then the next step is, once you're comfortable just talking into the camera and you get comfortable on the angle, this angle is better than this angle. It's more flattering. So hold the can. And this is important to a lot of people, especially as you get older. You know, at 59, I've got these circles under my eyes, and I could improve the lighting if I wanted to.
Oh man!
And that would make me look. I'm not as worried about it as I am when I first started. I could open up a light. See when I do this, I look a little bit better.
Yeah.
So all this stuff gets in our head. So by practicing, when you're sending these messages, practice a little bit with the lighting. Always, hold the camera a little bit higher, do it near a window so you get all this wonderful glow or ambient light, or even doing it from your car outside gives you kind of light from all angles that makes you look the best you can be on camera. If you're doing it above fluorescent light, you're going to look yellow and sickly. So all these little things. So experiment with lighting and positioning and background while you're doing these one-on-one videos. And then once you get comfortable with, like, oh, this is the best I can look on video, then start putting out content. Just with, it has to be a minute. I see a lot of people do these long videos. I don't know that people are watching them to the end. I hope people are watching this interview to the end, but that's different, because a dialogue is much more interesting than a monologue. So if you're doing a monologue into a camera, just do one for a minute. And guess what? You don't have to be an expert to even do it. You can be a conversation starter. You can simply ask a question, because as Alex would tell me, a question mark is more powerful than the exclamation point. And all you have to do is say, I was really giving a lot of thought about immunity and the relationship between food and immunity today. So my Facebook followers, I want to ask you, please below, tell me what you think the number one immunity booster is that we can be consuming each day with our food choices. And now you're a content curator. You don't have to be an expert to ask a question and then just watch and people love to be asked questions. And on Facebook, the more action you get in those comments, the more Facebook will show it to more people. So actually asking a question is a much better content strategy than answering a question on Facebook, but you should do a mix of both.
I love that. Thank you so much for walking us through it. Do you mind staying on for a few more minutes?
No, not at all. I don't have many plans this week.
Well, thank you for being here. Okay, so switching topic a little bit. So say someone is following all this strategy, they found their voice, they found their direction, they're starting their business in service of their purpose in life. Yeah, they double down on their core competencies. They're now doing videos more. So let's switch gear a little bit. On a professional level, everything's going virtual right now. The virtualization of delivering of service, delivering of content. What does this impact the events business? From your point of view as a community builder of the Shine movement in Orange County, as well as the enabler, yeah, I think that's probably a good way to articulate the enabler of these speakers, who's a huge part of the revenue stream is live events, right? So from these 2 points of view, how would you say the evolution or the disruption of the events business due to coronavirus?
Well, I had been given this a lot of thought even before the virus, because I do love events and trying to figure out how to expand the reach of events, and was looking at a bunch of platforms on broadcasting events live. So I thought about providing the service of just showing up at events with, or partnering with the events to show up with my video equipment and say, hey, can we broadcast the event live? And if we're selling tickets, there could be a revenue share. And in my research, I did not see any case studies of people doing that successfully. So I put that on pause, and then the virus came along. What this situation is doing for us, or towards that idea, is conditioning us to consume long format content this way. So in another 2 months, people are going to be very comfortable with consuming content remotely. And it doesn't mean they're not going to show up for events. I still think they'll show up to events in a big way. There's going to be all this pent up demand and need to reconnect with people in the community. But every event now has the opportunity to broadcast not just to that local audience in the room, but to a worldwide audience. Because now we will have 2 months of consuming content, long format content online. So people will be much more likely to sit down and watch an event if the content delivers what they need at the moment than they would have been just a few weeks ago.
Okay, so let's actually make it a little bit more personal. So what I've observed so far, there's a huge up spike of DJ sets, virtual DJ sets, musicians type of things, right? People love to be entertained, and then people obviously love Joe Rogan, right? He's very entertaining. He's very informative. The people that I interview are very, very informative. And hopefully, right, this kind of conversation, the Noble Warrior Life experience, will be leaning towards that as well. But talking heads, oftentimes really hard to capture people's attention span. So the goal is to make it valuable, to tease out mental models that they can, and then also actionable tactics that entrepreneurs can go out and apply. So it's not just two dudes talking whatever, which is okay too, but I don't mind that, but I wanted to make it more valuable that way. So someone who's listening, they're in the expert space, any tactical advice for them to make their videos more valuable?
That's a great question, CK. So, and I think the answer is, how do you make it engaging? It's not enough just to put a camera up at a live event. You may get some incremental eyeballs, but if you want to build out your property that way, it's a matter of being aware that that audience is there. And as I mentioned before, the question mark is more powerful than the exclamation point. So, if you're just shouting your expertise from the stage, that's good. But what's better is pausing every once in a while and saying, what do you guys think? What is about that? And phrasing it in an engaging question, and using a platform that has a comment stream. Usually it's on the right hand side. That's why I'm putting my hand there. And so it's a live version of, say, a Facebook post where people are populating it with their comments. So that's a way of making it sticky and keep people from just putting the video on in the background and continuing to surf the web. So now they're kind of mindlessly consuming the content. But if you keep them leaning forward metaphorically and on the edge of their seat, if they know that they're going to be asked a question every once in a while, and especially if they know they're going to be recognized. I remember years ago when teleseminars were a thing, and I would be listening to this learning material knowing it was live, and they could see who pre-registered and then who showed up. And the smarter ones would always mention people's names at the beginning. And I would get so excited when I knew this guy or a woman, halfway across the world would mention my name. And just little things like that to make it a more intimate experience is what thought leaders and trainers and speakers need to do from the front of the room when they start simulcasting their events. Don't just put a camera up, but create elements of engagement to keep people who are watching at home leaning forward.
Yeah. So a lot of known speakers, Harv Ekers, Alex Mandossian, Mark Victor Hansen, Chicken Soup with Soul. So I'm curious to know, have you seen them making any moves to do virtual seminars? Be like, hey, how many of you? So make it super engaging. I know they've kind of been going that direction already, but now that everyone is on Zoom, everyone is on Be Live, have you seen them making any kind of moves to do virtual seminars that way?
Oh, I think everybody's probably strategizing by now. So it's a really good time. It's a really good time to watch, and not only watch, but watch consciously. If you're somebody who wants to do this and wants to do it well in the future, just make notes of, okay, why I just sat and watched CK and Dan for an hour. What was it about that made it compelling that I can replicate? Or if you're watching music or DJ sets online, I belong to a group called Socially Distant Fest, and the algorithm has recognized that real quickly. I mean, my personal algorithm, that every time a new musician jumps on there, Facebook shows it to me. And some of those musicians I just watch for 2 seconds. It's uncompelling. I don't think about why. And then the next one I maybe watch for 5 or 10 minutes. So if I were a musician, I would sit back and say, okay, what was the difference there? Why did I tune this one out after a couple of seconds and I watched this one for 10 seconds? It may have been the music. It may have been the fact that singer-songwriter told me a story in addition to the music. It may have been aesthetics. Maybe the lighting was much better. Maybe the audio was much clearer. So if somebody is thinking about doing virtual seminars, monitor your own viewing habits. Like, okay, what made that one more engaging than the one I watched this morning? And then model and replicate it.
I love that. Thank you. What about the monetization aspect of it? Because I actually have seen a lot of DJs, musicians offering their beautiful gifts to the world, and my heart goes out to them. At the same time, I also know that a lot of streamers are figuring out ways to supplement their income, given that these live events revenue totally went away because they can't perform anymore in person. So they're trying to figure it out. Do they use Patreons? Have you seen any successful ways to monetize their content, their offering, their gifts, their performance?
Oh, I would say it's not necessarily about that moment to get $5 off of via Venmo or PayPal. And that's what I see almost everybody doing in the music space. The bigger opportunity is to create a list. If somebody is watching you for 5 minutes on Facebook and then they leave, they may never see you again. So I think it's okay to have a passive call to action. If you want to donate, here's my Venmo. But I think the bigger call of action is I would really like to get you on my email list. So when we get back to normal, you know where I'm going to be performing. Or when I release a new single, you know when that's going to happen. Or at least like my Facebook page. And I don't see enough people doing that. The internet marketers are savvy enough to do that. Because in human psychology, people really need to hear something 5, 7, 9, even more times before they actually purchase. That's why we're inundated with the same advertisements in public and on TV. They know that if you only see one message, that you're likely to forget it 5 seconds later. And that's why smart marketers have email lists. That's why smart marketers are putting out content every day. And sometimes it seems redundant or similar, but they're trying to get to that point of 5, 7, or 9, because that's where the purchase is made, or that's where the donation is made, not the first time. But if it's just one and done, you miss the opportunity to get that $5 if you're a musician, or that $9.97 if you're a strategic coach.
Yeah, I'll make it personal. So one of the things that I'm doing right now is podcasts can be very long, right? It's a long form content. Sometimes we go for an hour and a half, sometimes, up to 2 hours even. So not a lot of people, the audio learners, the super learners, love to extract and integrate and into their, so I would listen to a lot of long form contents at 2x speed as a way to just incorporate into my mental models, how I look at the world. Anyways, my way of attracting people to say, hey, yes, I want to be a part of this, is by offering an action guide, show notes. I call them CK notes. So that way they can immediately get cliff notes or CK notes on some of the key takeaway, the mental models, the actionable steps that Dan has so generously offered with us. So then don't necessarily have to listen to an hour and a half, hour intimate conversation. Beautiful, my friend. So is there any ideations of how you want to go about with the Shine movement in Orange County?
Well, the Shine movement is 100% volunteer supported, and I'm the chief volunteer. So I can only do those when I have time to. And I can't wait to do one in the fall when all of this is behind us, because I think there'll be a lot of pent up energy of people wanting to reconnect and be inspired. So you
don't plan to do it any virtual ones?
No, Shine is not my property. I went to a Shine movement event in Los Angeles. Light Watkins is the founder, and like me, other people have been exposed to it and then taken it to other places like London and New York and Miami. And I'm just the guy that halfway through looked at my friend who took me there and said, I'm going to bring it to Orange County. And I contacted Light a few days later and said, I would like to bring this to Orange County. So that's the extent of my relationship with. He said yes. and then it's a loosely based model that says, here's the blueprint, go forth and shine on, and there's no real reporting or oversight. I just get to do with it what I like, as long as I keep it within the intent. So I can only do that when I can do that, and so my bigger projects are Wake Up Audio books, Brain Tap, and I'll be launching Humans for Happiness, which is going to be the next incarnation of Mojo Dojo, and that's going to be my website to feature. I'm kind of BuzzFeed it this time. I'm going to have interactive quizzes and videos and celebrity news all around health.
What's your intention there with Human for Happiness? I'm curious.
Humans for Happiness is really a consolidation of all my passion projects, which include media like video and film. I'm a content creator, and I'm collecting stories from people that'll be inspiring to other people. I also just love curating and sharing content that I find out there in the world, and repurposing it into quizzes and content that I think will be more interactive and fun than the original content creators maybe intended. So it is another one of my passion projects that I hope to turn into something that benefits me as well. Again, wanting to do more good, and can only do more good if I can self-support with some of these projects, and whether that looks like an advertising model or a membership model. Humans for Happiness will eventually lean into that, but also reflective of my particular style, which is ready, fire, aim, that I don't always have I don't always lead with the strategy. I kind of put it out there based on the tools, and plugging my passion into the tools, and waiting for the monetization or the business model to reveal itself, which I don't recommend for anybody watching, but it's what works for me.
So Dan Maxwell, he is an author, an entrepreneur, and internet marketer as well. He recently released a book called Start From Zero. And I love that he articulated so clearly. He said a lot of entrepreneurs are very attached to what the outcome is. But ultimately, whatever shows up, whether it's a success, whether it's a failure, whether it worked or whether it didn't work, it's the market would speak for itself. Yeah. So I love the fact that you just put it out there, put your offering out there, and then see what the market will respond with.
Well, I'm a great starter, not always a great finisher. But for me to become a finisher, I put it out there, and then I wait and see how the market reacts. Or I should call them people, not market. How humans react, and then is there an adjustment that I can make based on the feedback that I'm giving? Is there a series of adjustments that I make that will get me across the finish line? And if I don't see those social signals, then I'll move on to the next project.
Well, I mean, as someone who admires your work, your sense of humor, I'm in that Humans of Happiness. I appreciate the content that you curated. I appreciate the little different points of view that you offer. If I were to make a bold statement, I would say that especially at a time like this, people really want that uplift of emotionality, the positivity, the optimism. So I think no better time than now that all of us need more of, happiness in the world. So thank you for doing everything that you do.
Thank you, Kay. And that was a conscious decision once I saw what was coming, that, okay, there are a lot of people that there's several archetypes kind of on social media and Facebook. There's the reporters of mostly negative news. There's the empaths. There's the conspiracy theorists. And I decided that, I wanted to be the person that was sharing the lighter stuff and the inspirational stuff.
So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about the mental health component. So someone who's listening to this, yes, go try brain tap for sure. But if they either are not able to or not ready to, what is something that they could do to move towards that inner awareness, that inner calmness, that inner peace?
Sure, I can share two things that I've been doing religiously in the last year. First off is grounding. I
Mm-hmm.
live a block away from Laguna Beach. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to go to the beach right now. They put fencing up that prevents that. But I was going down there every day, taking my shoes off, doing some stretching on the beach and some walking. I learned through a movie called Earthing the importance of grounding each day, which is connecting with Mother Earth without any footwear on, whether it's the grass, the dirt, the sand, that there's an ionic exchange that happens that we're missing, that native cultures still have and our ancestors have. But around the time that we started creating rubber-soled shoes and put flooring and concrete everywhere, that we lost our connection with the earth. And when I was exposed to this film called Earthing by a man named Clint Ober, and I tried it for myself, and I've been a lifelong insomniac, which in part contributes to the depression that I've experienced. If I'm always exhausted, it's hard to have mental balance. And as soon as I started grounding, just 20 minutes a day, I noticed that I was sleeping better. And it doesn't cost anything. Even under these circumstances, we can go outside, front of the house, back of the house, a park a block away, and take our shoes off and connect to the earth for 20 minutes. And I challenge anybody who struggles with insomnia to try that and come back and let me know if you're sleeping better. And it also claims to have the benefits of reduced inflammation, reduced anxiety, and things like that. But just forcing yourself to stop for 20 minutes and connecting with the earth, even if it's the placebo effect, it's still benefiting you because you had to stop and just pause. And that just pausing for 20 minutes has its benefits. So that's the first thing. The second thing is BrainTap is subscription based, so it does cost something. If you don't want to take on a subscription, that's fine. There's so much content out there, whether it is podcasts, whether it is YouTube. Sometimes I turn on a YouTube video just for the audio content, and I'll walk through the streets listening to that because I know it has what I want. An example of that would be I discovered the science of frequencies in the last year. Each frequency has a different benefit. I'll just take one, for example, that I know off the top of my head. 432 hertz is a healing frequency. And don't ask me to explain the science of it. I've looked into it. I don't remember it, but I remember thinking this is really powerful stuff. And if you go on to YouTube or you go on to SoundCloud and you plug in just 432 hertz, and that's HZ, all this free music will be revealed to you that has these embedded tones in the background. And so on my walks to the beach or on my walks around town now, or just to the park, I will download or live stream things that say 432 hertz, knowing that it has this embedded frequency. And so people can do that for free. And if you want to do more research on that, just Google something like 432 hertz and other frequencies, and an article somewhere will explain to you that this frequency does this frequency does that, and there's a really neat science behind it, and it's out there for free.
Do you do a little ecstatic dancing with 432?
Uh,
While you're doing some grounding exercises in the morning?
well, no, I don't do any dancing, but
Oh, dancing.
before they closed the beach, I started doing some running back and forth. This beach that I go to is maybe 600 or 800 yards wide, and I would do something like HZ music, techno, just so it had a big rhythmic pulse to it. And I was running to that music, and I would run forwards, and then I would turn and run sideways, and then I would run backwards, and then I would run sideways facing the ocean. So it was my own form of dancing, and if anybody up on the bluff was watching, I'm sure they got a big kick out of this 6'2" guy running in the surf sideways to this pulsating music.
Mm. So Dan, we cover a lot of things today in the last hour and a half. Thank you so much for your generosity. We cover finding your why. We cover your brainstorming process. We cover ways to discover your core competencies, superpowers, your unique asset. We cover what else? We cover video, right? What does specific tactical things to get on video, overcoming your inner resistance, sharing in 1 minute, asking questions. We cover the events business, potentially to amplify our message through Facebook Live and things like this, as well as some monetization models, perhaps. And we cover grounding. So we cover a wide spectrum of things for someone who is in search of more certainty right now in this uncertain time. Out of everything that you shared so far, what's one thing that they could do, and just if they leave with this one thing, they can find more certainty in their life? Out of everything that you shared, can you just highlight that one thing?
Well, CK, first, I have no idea how you just did that off the top of your head. So that recap is your superpower, and you're a great interviewer. So I hope you continue doing these and doing more of these. And I appreciate you sharing your gift today. As for the answer, I would say some form of meditation or visualization. It's easy to get lost in social media right now. I'm sure we're watching a lot of TV. A lot of us are confined to our houses with a lot of family members. So we have no time really for quiet time, for reflection. So whether it's meditation or guided visualization or just some calm music, we've got to find those 20 minutes a day somehow. And if you can be in your bare feet and somehow connected with the earth, even better. So I think that's what is needed more now than ever, and not only this week, but looks like for the next 60 days, you got to find that 20 minutes a day in that place. It's like George Costanza's father, serenity now. We need those 20 minutes a day.
Yeah, I would say, following on that, if you want outer peace, if you want outer certainty, you got to find inner certainty first. And I think meditation is a really great way to ground yourself. So that way we can go out and create things out of certainty rather than create things from uncertainty, the internal uncertainty ourselves. Yeah. So that's a beautiful place to stop. Hey, Dan, I thank you so much for sharing so generously with your story, with your curriculum, and the willingness to dance with me in this conversation. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, CK. And we didn't get to dive into much what you're doing these days. So anybody who happens to be watching on my channel, can you do us all a favor? And what is your call to action? What are you leaning into these days that people can benefit from?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. So I'm doing Facebook Live every day with entrepreneurs. So that's one thing as a way to contribute to the greater world. I think for me, my mission right now is to provide decision framework such that people can make correct decisions and eliminate mistakes. they do in the world. And so a lot of the questions that I ask is a way to tease out how we can all make better decisions, especially for entrepreneurs, especially for leaders during this time. So if you want some of these frameworks that I am putting together, if you go to cklen.com/certainty, then you'll find some of these curriculums that I put together.
And that's CKLAM, right?
cklan.com/.
All right. Very good. Well, thanks for sharing that. And thanks for asking me to join you today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.